Yay! What is up, everybody?
Yeah.
Happy Monday. Ginger Runner Live episode number 301 starts tonight.
You had to think about what day it was.
I did. I told Kim as soon as I woke up this morning, I didn't know what day it was.
You knew it was Sunday.
I legitimately thought it was Sunday, but I didn't know what week. And we talked and joked today that it's still March. That in our minds are going, oh, we're at the end of April. It's almost May.
Nope.
We're still in March. So we hope that you guys are all staying safe, having as much fun as possible, confined to your spaces, whatever those might be, apartments, condos, homes, what have you. But tonight, we wanted to get everything sort of back on track and schedule-wise and bring on a guest and do the show just as normal. Last week, we celebrated our 300th episode. There was cake. There were a tie. I had a tie, and there were dresses involved.
I wore a ball gown.
It was like prom here. But tonight we're bringing on a guest I'm very excited to have back on the show. He's just always such a delight. He's one of my good friends from Southern California when I lived there, and just a super stout athlete. Andy Pearson's going to join us on the show tonight to talk about the Barkley being canceled, because he was to run the Barkley this year. And rather than, because the event was canceled, rather than put that fitness to waste, he came up with a pretty cool project called the Back to Backbone, which is a out and back on the Backbone Trail in the Santa Monica Mountains, which I believe is 68 miles each way, with tons of gain. It's something I've always wanted to do, at least one direction, one way. But we're going to talk to him tonight about what happened out there on the Back to Backbone project.
Back to
Backbone project. So sit back, relax, everyone. We're excited to have you tonight for Ginger Runner Live episode number 301. It begins now. Ginger Runner. Yay! What is up, everybody? Thank you for taking some time out of your busy Mondays to spend a little bit of it with us. Happy Ginger Runner Live episode number 301.
Does it feel weird to say 300 and something?
Yes. Last week felt normal to say 300 because we'd just been building the anticipation up to it.
Because we had been in the 200s like almost as long as we've been in March.
More than
right?
2 years. Yeah. We've
just
been in
checking.
It's been March for 2 years.
Okay.
March 2020. It's been going on like this since 2018. We hope that everyone is staying safe and around the world is finding ways to stay sane and find entertainment. And that is, of course, why we are continuing to do Ginger Runner Live every single Monday. I posted 2 reviews over the weekend. We did some movies and stuff on the channel a couple weekends ago. But we've been doing as much as we can to just sort of keep things normal and show you that just because you're confined within your environment, that we are still able to maybe entertain you. So tonight, episode number 301 of Ginger Runner Live is right on back to that regular schedule. And we have, other than the fact it's early.
Back to our regular schedule, except it's early.
But we have a wonderful guest tonight. I'm super excited to welcome Andy Pearson back to the show. He's been one of our most, traveled guests as far as streaming in live, because he's come to us live from Hawaii. He's come to us live, I think, from Big's backyard.
Somewhere else too, I thought.
I wouldn't be surprised if Andy's been there and has come onto the show to join us. But I'm excited tonight because this guy is super fit. He's a super strong trail runner. He was supposed to be running the 2020 Barkley Marathons, which was to take place this last weekend. Rightfully, the event was canceled, and he had all this fitness, and he decided to do a personal project that he'd wanted to do for a long time called the Back to Backbone, which is a out and back on the Backbone Trail in the Santa Monica Mountains, which is 68 miles one way. So that's 136 miles two ways. And the amount of gain, I'll have him correct me once we bring him up, but it's a lot. It's a lot of gain because you're basically running the spine of the Santa Monica Mountains, and there's a lot of ups and a lot of downs. But the adventure was not without its issues, as seems to have been the thing that happens to Andy all the time. So we'll talk to him about all of this on tonight's episode. I'm pretty excited about it because this guy's just a great storyteller in general. But before, of course, we introduce our guest, we do have some individuals to thank. And of course, Kim, you're in the chat room now too.
I am in the chat room. Welcome, everybody. If you're new to the show, I'm Kim Tashima Newberry. We are live with our wonderful guest, Andy. So if you guys have questions for Andy, I will be watching the chat room. So pop them in there and we will ask them throughout.
Jump into the chat. It's a great place to interact with both us and our guests and
each other.
It's a fantastic community. Speaking of which, community. We are able to do this live show, do these reviews, do these movies throughout all of this because of our Patreon crew. We call them the GR crew because they are seriously the most supportive team of individuals from across the globe that help support us in doing this full-time throughout all of this. What we've been doing in the last couple of weeks is we've been going live every single day for our GR crew. So for the $3 and up levels on Patreon, patreon.com/thegingerrunner. We've been doing daily live shows called The Daily Brew. It's been awesome. It's been super fun. Over a cup of coffee or over a beer, we shoot the shit with our community, and it's just been an absolute blast. So we'll be doing that every single day.
I may even bust out the Kirkland white wine. Who knows?
Oh,
what will
man,
happen.
if it gets to that point, you know it's going to get good. So a shout out to our Patreon crew. Just because of them that we're able to do this. Two individuals in particular at that top tier. Chris Lee out of Hong Kong. Chris has an organization called Trailblazer that showcases the trails in the region, but he also has a brick and mortar, and it looks like they're doing really good sales online and international because they've obviously been on lockdown as well. But Chris and his organization they're fantastic humans. We get to chat every once in a while, and big shout out to Chris and Brian Sands, a longtime supporter of the show. Brian has an incredibly inspiring story. Over 50 years old, but trained and executed his first marathon, his first 50K, has lost over 100 pounds in his journey. He's just been a huge member of the community, inspirational to many. So shout out to those two individuals. If you'd like to join the crew, all you got to do is go to patreon.com/thegingerrunner. That's the pitch. Now, without further ado, our good friend, coming to us from Southern California in what looks like a beautiful day, which is kind of the opposite of what we've got going up here. Let me change. I realized I got to change. His name is not Danielle. Andy Pearson. Okay, I had to change the text. Without further ado, our guest, Andy Pearson.
Yay!
Hi.
How are you?
Hello. I'm well. I am less sore than I expected to be talking to you right now, but doing well. I expect to be like I was expecting to be like a puddle right now, just like lounging around, like gently sipping beer from a straw, but I'm actually doing pretty well today.
So obviously we have a lot to cover. I just wanted to get the stats out there first, because I know the Backbone Trail in Santa Monica, before we even get into it, 68 miles each way with how much gain?
It's around like 15-ish, I think.
15,000 each way.
Yeah. So if you double it, it's 30 and 136 miles.
Okay.
So it's like, there's very few flat bits to it. It's either you're kind of going up or you're going down pretty much the whole time.
The few sections of it that I've run, which are the initial ones, like out of Will Rogers and up to the top and along the ridge, they're stout. Like, there's no doubt that the entire, even the later sections that we've run together, deeper in the Santa Monica Mountains, you're either going up or you're down. There's just very few flat sections.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The good thing is it's pretty non-technical for the most part. So you can, like, the current FKT on the one way is, I believe it's Jeff Browning in like 11 and change, 11:30 something, I think.
Okay.
He did it when they used to put on a race. The Coyote cohorts used to put on a race the whole way, and so he has the FKT on it.
I remember that. Actually, that was fairly wasn't it like 4 or 5 years ago? Like, it wasn't too long ago.
Yeah.
So I want to back up a little bit. Obviously, we've had you on after a number of your adventures. The Yosemite 100 that you put together. We had you on at Big's Backyard. We've had you on after Hurt 100. This was supposed to be a completely different weekend for you, obviously. Let's go back and
everyone.
Say that again.
I think it's supposed to be different for everyone.
Yeah.
You know, it's like this crazy time we're living in.
Well, let's start there, actually, because you're a dad. You're a new dad. How has that been? How has it been working from home with the family? Obviously, you have a beautiful backyard to go to, but
yeah, it's not. Yeah, I seem to be doing a lot of shows about backyards. No, it's good. You know, it's funny. My wife and I both work from home anyway. We already did. We kind of a couple of years ago kind of quit our jobs, you know, our normal advertising jobs, and decided to travel the world together and freelance while we're doing that. And so then when we got back home to LA, we just continued to do that. And so it's kind of been it's been funny for us because the whole world is freaking out about working from home. And we're like, we've been trying, I'm sure you guys are the same way. We're like, we've been trying to tell you this is the way you're supposed to be doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's so much better. I mean, granted, like, it's not great if like the whole world shuts down and you can't go to like a movie theater or a restaurant or something. But like, it's in some ways it's been a very seamless transition for us. But yeah, we did. I actually have my 4-month-old daughter like off camera right here, who's smiling at me. But so she was born back in November, and then literally a month later, with a 1-month-old, I got my letter of condolence for Barkley, which was totally out of the blue. And I'd only, I hadn't been applying that long, and I just didn't expect to get it, to be honest.
Right.
I mean, I was like, I know the caliber of people that have been in it, and obviously Guillaume is my good buddy, and he's done an amazing job these last couple of years. And yeah, I was like, I know I'm a strong runner, but I didn't think that I had a much shot at it, and it came like out of the blue, and just threw my life into a tailspin for like a week. And talking to other people, I think that's like the experience when you get into Barkley, because you don't ever expect it, and then you're just like, oh no, what have I done?
It is literally a letter, like it just makes you
Yeah.
upset.
Yeah. Like, well, it's really funny because so we had the 1-month-old, and then I was actually looking at changing jobs, and I had this job offer that I was about to accept. And like literally the next day or two, I was going to call them and be like, hey, I'm going to take that job. And I was out at dinner with my wife, and was like in the bathroom, checking email on the toilet, as you do on over
We're doing
over
that
the
right
holidays.
now. We're doing a show from the toilet.
Yeah. You have a couple's potty.
Yes.
That's so cute of you. And so I was like, literally, it was like 11 o'clock at night, and I'm like checking my email, and I see this email pop up that was like, we regret to inform you that, the whole email. And I was just like,
oh no.
Oh. And I'm in the bathroom, and I think I just started like cursing, and my parents were here, and Liza they were like, are you okay? And I'm in the bathroom like, oh no. Because I have a 1-month-old, and I'm about to take a job. And so it just like everything. I was like, I don't know what my life is right now, because it just for like a week totally upended everything.
Yeah.
But I think that's like how it has to be. Like, from the commitment level to take on something like the Barkley is, it's just like it's a once in a lifetime opportunity.
Right.
And you have to give it that respect. And if you hope to have any success, you have to put your life on hold. I mean, you guys obviously know this, with Gary and with everybody else. It's like, it's sort of expected if you're gonna really do it right. And
right.
And it was a funny, like, the really feeling the weight of that responsibility, because how important how many people want that spot. And so to be one of 40 in the world and 20 in North America to have this shot, it's like you have to be so instantly serious about it. And so for like, at least that was my experience. I'm not an anxious person at all. And for about a week, I was like walking around in a daze, like, what am I going to do? So yeah, so I actually ended up having to call this job, and I was like, hey, so I was gonna, this call is actually supposed to be me accepting the job, but instead, I have to tell you, I got into this race, and I can't really explain what this race is. I can try, but like, how do you explain that to somebody?
What an initial conversation of like, I'm so excited for this job. I have this crazy thing that's about to happen. You have no idea.
I think you just like send them a documentary and just go like,
hey man, that's why I made the movie. It's for your bosses.
Totally. No, that's what I've been doing. I'm like, look, there's a couple documentaries. Here's a New York Times article if you like reading. Like that's like the best I can do to explain it.
Right.
And for a while it's funny. They were to their credit, they were like, okay, yeah, we can. I guess we'll wait till April for you to start, which is very cool of them, and I really appreciate that. And but it was funny for a while. They were like, we have people that do like running things too. Like there's like, I mean, you can train for your like marathon, and then like when you're done with it, you can, And I was like, well, it's called the marathons, but it's not. I was like, I can't explain this to you.
Yeah, it'll never work.
And then finally, they started like watching the documentary, and I started getting emails. They're like, "Oh my God, you're in this thing!"
Yeah.
So it switched over pretty quickly, but yeah, it was cool. They let me push off. So I'm actually literally starting that job next week. That I was supposed to take. But
so you get to start this new job, and you have no stories to tell. Like that's
exactly.
what's like you. I bet you just wanted to go with like, oh man, you wouldn't believe how much harder it was than I thought. All those heavy stories.
Yeah, I was stoked. But yeah, at least I won't be like that weird running guy. Maybe at work. Maybe it'll be better.
You'll just be the weird guy that couldn't start his job for weeks for some unknown reason. Getting that sort of letter, obviously talking with people like Gary and other friends who have participated in the event in the past, I can imagine it's very much a reality check, knowing that your life will essentially have to go on hold because training will become a huge part of it. I mean, if not like a majority of your day is going to be spent out putting yourself through the ringer. When did you start getting an idea that things wouldn't, I mean, I guess things wouldn't necessarily play out? Like, did you have any sort of mindset going into the last few weeks of like, oh man, all this training was for naught?
No, I mean, never. I think, there was a lot of back and forth amongst the runners and Laz, in the final like 2 weeks kind of leading up, where everyone was just sort of trying to figure out how to make this possible. I think the first moment it really set in was when the travel ban was announced.
Right.
And it was like instantly you're like, wow, half the field is just gone. And it was like a daily conversation with everybody, basically. And, as we all experienced, things were unfolding by the like hour, literally. Right. And so like add to that all Barkley and trying to get all these people from all over the globe to come here and do that together. And so I think in a testament to like the ultra runner mindset, we all were trying to make it work and shaving off like every bit of it. And it was going to be like, maybe no crew at all, or, it was like getting shaved down into this little thing. And no one wanted to admit that it was going to not happen.
Mm.
I mean, like my story times 40 of everybody trying to, putting their lives on hold, 3+ months, 5 months for the international travelers, it's like, no one wanted to let that go. So like the very last moment we were all clawing to try to like figure out a way to make it happen.
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately it was kind of a collective decision to obviously do right by the law and things that we're saying. And then also just to protect travelers and protect the race staff and everything else,
Yeah, it was a question that we had also as race directors and having to make really tough calls with Tiger Claw and like postponing and stuff like that. We knew going in the last few weeks that I was more curious with Barkley because it is such a small community of runners. It's 40 runners, but knowing how international it is, it's tough with the travel ban that went into place. It's like, well, there's half the field that's immediately affected by this. And I know Laz just wouldn't want to put on an event where he sorts through thousands of people to be there. And when half of the actual people he chose can't show up, I can only imagine he probably came up with 100 different iterations of how to make it happen, but in a different
Yeah.
time and stuff like that. So ultimately, the decision was made to cancel the Barkley. Do you? I guess this is also information that you may not be able to divulge, but will it ever happen again, or will they reschedule this year? You don't have to say when if it is a thing, but are they going to just push this to next year, or is there any plans in place at this point?
Yes, it'll happen with the people that were, in for the most part. I think.
Good.
As everything, I think like I was thinking about this the other day. It's like everybody's year is going to be like crystallized in amber, and then literally a year from now, we're all going to take little hammers and chisel out, and then because states like I can't imagine Hard Rock is going to be far behind. AC just canceled. Like UTMB, I haven't heard anything. I don't think, but there's no way that's going to happen at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like we all just have to all just look down like what this year looks like without our races, and it's a really interesting thing because we were saying it's like a lot. I think what we'll see is a lot of just like FKT attempts and solo attempts, and interesting stuff happens. Dave Proctor is doing the backyard quarantine backyard ultra, which is really cool. I don't know if you guys know him. Have you guys had him on before?
I don't think we've had Dave on the actual show before. I believe I've met him before. I forget, but I know that he's doing this backyard quarantine.
Yeah, he loves to talk, so you should have him on. He's a good dude. We met at Biggs this year, and so I think you're just, it's going to be a really fascinating year to see what people make of it personally and with races and everything. And then, in a year we'll come back to it, and I think have priorities, in a different place in good ways. I think like it's the time to reflect on that. So that's, like the moment that Barkley was done, I was like, okay, what am I going to do with this?
Yep.
3 months of your life and pushing off a job and like literally training for Barkley, the moment I was going to sleep at night, it was the last thing I thought about. And it's the first thing I thought about when I was waking up I was waking up at like 2:30 in the morning, some mornings to get out and do a 25-mile run on like a Tuesday morning,
Yeah.
So that was when this back to backbone thing kind of came about, because I'd always been wanting to do it. I had done the backbone once several years ago, and mostly I thought of the name Back to Backbone as I was doing it. I was like, oh, if you did it twice, you just call it Back to Backbone.
Right.
And then I was like, well, now I want to do it. So that was what got it, which no one has called it this yet. So I'm glad that you guys are in my camp on this. It's just like on the FKT site, it just says like Out and Back Backbone or something. Or I know Howard Cohen has called it like a yo-yo backbone. And I'm like, oh, it's
Back to Backbone just makes perfect sense. It makes sense.
Obviously.
It's a good alliteration. It works. So obviously a project that you wanted to do for a while, or at least even just the backbone, having it in the back of your head. I know that I wanted to do it when I lived in Los Angeles. It was just one of those like, oh man, I can't wait to do that someday. And I think the last 2 years I lived there, they had made it all the way through. Like they got the rights to the private lands and were able to connect it legally through the whole thing. And it was just one of those like, oh, this is going to be such a cool route someday.
It goes through Arnold Schwarzenegger's property at some point, actually, up in like the top part of it.
And he actually stands along it and cheers you on, right? Like that's part of
with a gun. With a gun, he's just pointing.
You're doing so well. Keep running. I am really curious. So you had all this fitness. You've done just massive amounts of training for Barkley. We've talked about it on the show before about how much it actually takes. You're going to apply it to this project, which again still kind of pales in comparison, but sounds like a really super fun, adventurous thing. I want to make point, and obviously we have people from around the world that watch this show, but at that point when you made the plans, the trails were open, and what sort of limitations were already in place at that point? Because this is last week.
Yeah, so again, it's literally like I mean, it's been by the hour. Stuff has been changing. So, I basically they had started to shut down some of the parks in LA, just from basically overcrowding. It's like people go out and they're just a bunch of people together on a single track somewhere, and and you're like, this is not good, And so then, as of Friday, the mayor announced that all trails in LA County were shut down, all trails and beaches, but a lot of backbone, most of it is on actual National Park Service jurisdiction. So it didn't fall under, my understanding is that it didn't fall under that, but obviously like the night of, I'm literally packing up my final stuff and it's like all the trails in LA County are closed. And so I did a lot of research, was asking a lot of questions, and as far as I could tell, they were still open.
Okay.
But I was like, man, this is not looking good. This makes me a little nervous, and I don't want to. I'm going for this FKT. I don't want to do anything illegitimate or anything. I want to, and just generally be a good example. And so I woke up. I like triple checked everything in the morning, and I was like, okay. So at 6 a.m. got to Will Rogers State Park, the I guess it's the eastern terminus, and left. And as far as I knew at that point, all the trails were still open, and
right.
Mm-hmm.
And that has changed as I was literally on the trails. So
Go ahead.
I was gonna say that morning I was like scrolling through Twitter and I was like, oh my God, I think they just closed all the trails. And you're like, I wonder if Andy started. I wonder if he's out there. And if he's out there, where is he? And does he know?
Yeah.
And does he know? Because you and I had messaged a little bit last week, just kind of we mentioned it on the Daily Brew, and you had sort of mentioned in passing, like, hey, I might attempt this backbone thing this weekend. You also kind of called it on social of like, here's my call out. I'm doing this thing.
Yeah.
In Washington State right now, things are much different. Like the trails have been closed for about a week, based off of just some major issues with people going to trailheads and stuff last week. So they shut down most of the trails. So when you said you were going to do the back-to-backbone, in my head, my first thought was, oh, I hope he beats the trail closures, because obviously you're going solo. You're doing everything right? So social distancing, you're going alone. You're self-maintained, and it's an out and back. So you're not bringing cars and people out into the middle of nowhere. You were literally just self-contained.
That was the idea. I was like, it's the ultimate social distancing. I was like, I'm literally by myself over a very long distance. Like, it can't get any more socially distant than this.
Yeah.
So that was like, I thought that was like the nice kind of poetry of the whole thing. Like, if I was able to do it, I thought it was just kind of a very nice tie-in to the times.
The day before is when I think both Kim and I looked at each other and like, man, I hope Andy starts early. Like, it's the weekend. I know crowds are going to be big at California trailheads.
And we're seeing things happen kind of in Washington State first, and then we're seeing it kind of echoed throughout Oregon and California, either like a few days later or like a week later. So it was only a matter of time.
Okay, so you're getting out there. You started at Will Rogers, I'm assuming?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, so Will Rogers, you head out. It's a beautiful climb up to the ridge, and you get to run up and down the ridges and valleys and stuff like that. Do you have cell signal during this time? Are you checking constantly? Like, what's sort of the plan going forward, like in your head, if these trails are getting closed or that sort of thing?
I was encouraged by the fact that there were no signs up when I arrived in the morning, and I was like, okay, this is good. It's on. I'm doing it. And I'd been anxious all morning. And as soon as I started, I was like, out of my mind. I was like, it's not going to help. I'm just doing it now. And I had a Garmin InReach on me, so I was like, if something really happens, someone will message me and tell me that things are closed. So I was just going. My pack was way too heavy. It's like 14 pounds. Because it's like all the nutrition you have and all, 3 battery packs and everything for that long. It was fully self-supported. So I was going, and I made about 20 4 miles or so, and I crossed paths with this other runner, and we were chatting for a second, and he was like, "Hey man, I just came from Payuma Trailhead, and he's like, the trails are closed, man. They just literally the ranger was putting up the closed sign as I was there."
Oh,
and I was just like, no. And I was like, no, I mean, they like closed them for the county, but he's like, yeah, I mean, I was chatting with her and they're all closed now, man. And I was like, and so I'm just like, okay, maybe not, maybe this section is closed, and maybe, like, it's the thing you do. You're like, that, how can I solve this in my brain with no other information? So I continued on, didn't really think about it. I was just trying to like keep going. And then I, eventually got to this place. It was actually where I had first cached water. And I got there. It was like backbone. They like the way they placed the trail closed sign was like perfect, where it didn't just say like trail closed. They like positioned it directly. So it read the sign that said backbone trail. They put that underneath it. So it says backbone trail closed. Like,
yeah.
it was just like, it was like, no, it's dead. There is nothing for you to do here. And I stopped and I was like, oh my God. And I somehow had cell service there, and I like lay down and I pulled up the Twitter account, and at 9:30 it was like, effective immediately, all trails are closed, blah, blah, blah. Please, follow all posted signs. And I was just like, sat down and I was just like, man, it's just like, it was this moment of this thing had been ripped away from me so many different ways. And, I guess Barkley, like, you expect some level of like it being ripped away in some fashion.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're always like prepared for that, but you can't think about it, but you have to be ready for it. And, and it was just like, I'd done everything to try to get to that. I'd been through all these different things. And it's like this moment where it's just like, nope, your year's done, sir. And
it's funny. You sent me a couple of videos. I had some technical difficulties getting them for the show, so I won't be able to show up. But I have a feeling that I know Andy, and he had mentioned he's gonna be writing up a big thing sort of about this and other adventures that he's been doing. I imagine these videos will see the light of day, so people will be able to watch them. But you filmed the moment you get to the sign, and it's when you film the sign, you're like, oh God, it's closed. Okay, what now? And then you film yourself sort of having a minute and a half kind of existential crisis, like trying to figure out, it's beyond just like, what do I do now? It's more like, what do I just do? Like, what do I do with myself? And it's a great video because I think that you can see it play out on your face. And it's a thing that's played out, I think, in all of our faces in the last month of, well, what do I do now? Like, I have all this motivation, or I have this momentum, or my training's been going well, or these races I'm training for are my A-list, and these things ripped out from under you. You filmed the exact moment that this tiny project in the whole scheme of things got ripped out from under you. So I hope that video makes it into what you're writing up.
Yeah.
It's just kind of that moment that we've all had in the last month. So at that point, you're stuck 25 miles into this thing. What did you have to do, or what did you decide to do at that point?
Well, I mean, it was a little bit of like, well, I could just keep going and say I didn't see the sign, and just plead ignorance. But, that felt antithetical to the SKT attempt and like the honor system of Barkley and everything. I mean, because ultimately in the end, this was supposed to be the replacement for Barkley as well. And that's why I waited till Saturday to do it, which is the grand irony too, right? Because I was going to do it I was like, I should just, do it on like Thursday or Friday and do it sooner. And then but I wanted it to be this thing for Barkley.
Yeah.
And so that just kind of kicked me in the nuts in the worst way possible. But, I just was like, that's it. And it's amazing how, like, it just, the moment that goes away, like all the all the adrenaline and everything just like leaves your body. And luckily I'd cached water there, but I also had put a bottle of Coke. And I was like,
good.
I'm going to sit here and drink this damn Coke and eat a sandwich and have a picnic. And so I just like had a picnic in a little patch of grass and just enjoyed it. And then I was like, all right, I have a 25-mile run back to my car, I guess.
Right. So you did it 25 miles backwards.
Yeah. Yeah. I was like, I could call someone, but I was like, again, it feels like self-extraction is in the name of the game here. And it was funny when I got back to Will Rogers, actually, I got stopped and questioned by some police. Because I was curious how like serious this was. But so as I'm going back, they were literally had like roped off part of the trail that I just passed through. So I was like, oh, they were behind me, closing off all these trails as I was going forward. And then I got back to Will Rogers, and they had police standing there with like a big SUV and stuff. And this guy was like, hey man, everything's closed. And he was like, how'd you get in? Because they had been standing there. They were like, they didn't know how I got in because they'd been standing there blocking the gate and stuff. And I was like, oh, well, I was here really early in the morning. And he was like, how early? I was like, 5:45. And he was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
and then like, but meanwhile, it's like 4 p.m, which doesn't make any sense. So I was like, okay, so let me explain. I was trying to run from here up to like Ventura County and back. And I like said it. The guy was just like, dude, you're an animal. And then we just started chatting about that. And then he was like, it was totally fine. But for a moment I was like, oh man. So I escaped not getting like a fine or arrested or anything too, you know?
Yeah, I would really, well, it would have been a great story if you had to like get bailed out of prison or something.
Yeah. I'm just in like running shorts, like in the back of a cop car. And they're like, what are you in for? I was like,
50 miles. Like,
yeah,
I did 50 miles. So, I mean, in the end, you managed to get 50 miles, pretty difficult miles, but I want to commend you on making the right decision and listening to that sign. Because again, this video that you show, you're kind of in the middle of nowhere. You're 25 miles deep on the backbone. It's not a huge junction. Are you at, oh my God, Malibu State Park yet? Yeah, you are.
Yeah, that's where I hit. That's where it closed down.
Got it. So, I mean, you're still kind of out in the middle of nowhere. It could have been very easy for you to just walk past this sign. There's no ropes up or anything. There was no guard on duty. But I commend you for obeying that sign and turning around and staying on the trails that were open at the time and not getting arrested at the end because they had obviously closed those trails. We do have live questions. So Kim's pulled a bunch aside.
Yeah.
I realized that I kind of took over because I was just like into the storytelling, but please go for it.
People are talking about how good of a storyteller Andy is.
Andy's
so people
great.
have just been like listening.
And I apologize about the audio delay. I'm aware of it. There's like 15 frame delay on Andy and the audio that is on my end. So I apologize for that.
You should.
I'm still trying to troubleshoot this damn system, but go ahead. Sorry.
Let's see. Nathaniel in the chat room says, I imagine professional athletes are creatures of habit. How does the unknown relating to not just races, but public spaces in general impact your training and your mindset?
I mean, I think that's what we're all grappling with right now. I mean, right? It's like my first thought literally when this happened was I was like, I guess I have to get a Peloton now. I was like, that was like my very first thought as I was like running back was how do I do this now? Especially, I mean, in LA and you guys too, it's like the trails are closed, like everything is closed. I mean, it just means kind of no running. I mean, road running, kind of, but I don't know. I'm think we're all still processing that, and I can't, for people that make their livelihood off of this too, I'm not talented enough to be able to do that. But like, I mean, there's a lot of people that are suddenly like, man, what am I going to be doing this year? I have to put a lot of this stuff on hold. So, yeah, I don't have a good answer for that. I don't think. Not yet.
Brian in the chat room says, did Andy take a look at Frozen Head's weather this weekend? If so,
Oh my
how does he
God.
think he would have affected the race?
There was this whole chain going on. It was like, it's going to be perfect weather.
Mm-hmm.
And it pretty much was. I mean, it was like, I think it was like high as 72 on Saturday. I mean, it was about as good as it can get. I mean, I think there's still a little bit of rain and there was a storm that came through, but that's sort of to be expected. I mean, there was nothing, not in the cold, and which was what I was personally preparing for. Jamil and I and Gary went out ahead of time about, I guess, 4 weeks ago, and it was pretty. That was my first taste of the park, and it's amazing how much the weather can swing in a. We were there for 3 days, and we had it was like snow the first day, like rain and fog the second day, and then like beautiful sunny weather the third, and that would have been the time of the whole of 5 loops. So that's what I was prepared for, and then you're like, of course, it was lovely weather. It like been any other thing for Barkley,
I saw a report that there was like one system that rolled. I could be completely wrong, but I thought I saw a report of like thunder, lightning, all sorts of crazy fog and rain and that stuff. But then it was like right back to perfect.
Yeah. So like you kind of expect something like that. But
yeah. Well, whenever it does end up happening, I hope that the weather is terrible. I hope just for your full Barkley experience, when you do get a chance to enjoy it, that it is exactly what it should be.
I do want to mention Guillaume last year was like, oh, I hope we have terrible weather. He's like, because if you finish in a year with good weather, people say it doesn't count.
Right.
And I was like, I'm pretty sure if you finish Barkley, like people tell you that it counts.
There will be. I have never stepped foot on anything other than just the trails in that park. I am not by any means an expert on any of this, but I guarantee you that if you finish on a good weather year, there's going to be 5 people that will never let you have a Barkley finish. Like there will be those 5 people that are like, dude, it was sunny. Like that's
the weather
not a
was
finish.
too good.
Yeah, the weather was too good. That's not a.
He had it handed to you.
That's not an official finish. Dave Horton will not let you have a finish. I'm sure of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Sure.
Maybe one more live question, and then we're going to talk about some of his other adventures and how this all seems to be what happens to Andy.
Yeah. Marianne in the chat room was asking, would you stick to the same training plan for Barkley the next go around, or would you change anything about how you trained this year?
I will say I executed my plan perfectly. I hit every single benchmark exactly where I wanted to be. I think getting to run with Gary in Frozen Head like 3 weeks out, I was like, oh, he's very strong. and and I was like feeling pretty good about myself. And then I know how he's coming back from an injury and has done an amazing job, and honestly like didn't have that crazy high mileage, but he was just knocking out elevation like crazy, and was putting in some incredible training. And I think like right before I was like, oh, I need to do even more. And that's the problem, is like with Barkley, you get a 3-month window to train. You find out, and then you're suddenly it's like toe the line 3 months later, basically. And that's just, there are a lot of things that are unfair. And I say that not in a like a victim way, but it's just like, it's not possible for that race to train adequately in that time period. So I do think the interesting thing going forward is you have a lot of people that know that they're in next year that have a whole year to train. Although all of their trails may be closed right now, but
right.
But it's the first time that you'll have. I think next year will be a very strong year, if for nothing else than a lot of people will have time to train. So I'm looking forward to that.
I can only imagine knowing Gary and his multiple attempts and his just desire to get it done, I can only imagine how that kind of people like yourself who were ready to go this year, how that will carry over for them of like, I was so ready. Now we need to be extra ready. So I can't wait for the next time it happens, because I think it's just going to be people who are already strong at their strongest. And again, hopefully the weather sucks. Hopefully the weather is like
that'll
terrible,
equalize
so
it, and then no one will finish. It'll be great. Yeah,
it'll be so great.
Perfect again.
It'll be so great.
Yeah.
I want to transition briefly here towards the end of the show. You mentioned this during our chat today, and it was just sort of like oh, wow, yeah, this is kind of what's happening. You've never DNF'd a race, but you've had multiple adventures that have just gone awry, from the Yosemite 100 to this. What's sort of the trend, and how do you feel when you realize that recently?
Well, I'll correct. I've had one DNF that I count. It was like Bryce 100. Just the flame went out at like mile 74. But I went back and finished that a few years later. Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think like obviously this makes you think about failure a lot, and whether that's in your control or out of your control. But I think like, to me, the path that this has been on was like, I had several years ago, I had a really good Western States and finished it. And I was like, cool, I can do that. And I was like, that doesn't scare me anymore, you know? And I think everybody at their base is doing this stuff because you want to be scared. Because I think, like, at least for me, life can be very easy and you can just go about it and do it. But like, there's few times when you feel like real abject fear. And I think after a while with doing states, I wasn't scared anymore. And so like my reaction finishing states was like, I have to do Bigfoot or do a 200 because that is freaking terrifying to me. And so I think like I try to bite off a lot of these adventures that are maybe not going to end successfully. And I think that's what makes it exciting. Like if I was still just, and not that there's anything wrong, but like if I was just doing 100 milers and picking off ones that I hadn't done yet, I don't know that I would keep like the stoke alive as much versus, you know, Bigs. The first, when I did Bigs, it's just like, I was on the show, it blew my mind because I was like, there's other stuff that you can do that isn't just like, you know, we measured 50 miles from here to here, and now you're going to go run that course. Not that there's anything wrong with that again, but I think like I think inherently running is a creative pursuit in a lot of ways. And I think like it stimulates a lot of creative side, at least for me. And so that's where stuff like, I mean, the Barkley is an inventive race. It's a fascinating race. And like even the documentaries, even your documentary and the other one, like there's so much more even beyond that you just like can't even tell in a film when you get to meet the people. And like read like Frozen Ed's book. If people haven't read that, that's like a fascinating book. And so I think like these things are inherently creative pursuits, and they're naturally scary, and they should be. And so like, I don't know, I've done a lot of stuff like that where I didn't know how it was going to end up, and it hasn't ended up well, but you know, like that's some of the most memorable stuff that I've done. And I'm proud of the failures, I guess, in a way. Yeah.
I mean, you mentioned that we do this stuff to sort of taste that little bit of fear and to like push who we are as humans. It's as much as it's an athletic endeavor. You're right. It's like we do these big things that are scary because it's in those moments we learn more about what we're actually capable of. And it sort of becomes this craving to learn more and more and more about our limits or lack thereof. And it's been so fun, Andy, to follow just your adventures. Yes, your races. I realized that we had you on after Bigfoot too. I forgot about that.
Right.
Like
you had that's just right.
finished.
Yeah.
And that was from a remote area of Washington State, but you had just finished Bigfoot 200. And I think you were still like glassy-eyed from just the what the fuck was that? But
I couldn't talk. Remember, I had lost my voice in the middle of it, and I couldn't.
That's right. Sleep deprivation,
Yeah.
food, everything. That's a great
Yeah.
episode. That's a good one to go back to as well. But just the things that you've done, like the races are amazing, and we've been such a huge fan of you on a race front. But seeing the adventures that you do in these creative ways you challenge yourselves has been another real joy. I hope you can get back to it soon. I hope that we all can. I hope people out there watching maybe get a little bit of creativity inspiration from Andy, because he's doing these projects with that creative mind at play. With the Back to Backbone is one of them, which I'm sure you'll put on a plate to devour later.
Mm-hmm.
Good. Hopefully someday those trails will all be open. But people, if you are confined to a space, let's get creative. There's lots of wonderful events and stuff like that we're going to talk about here in just a second. But we're going to wrap up the main show. We're going to move into our after show with Andy. So if you have residual questions, we'll ask those in our after show. Before we do that, Andy, where can people find you on social media? Where can they sort of keep up with what Pearson's up to?
I'm on the Stravas. I think you can just search for me. Instagram is I even shot this. Twitter is I even wrote this. Personal website, portfolio website, I even wrote this sick URL. Basically just put in I even did whatever, and you can find it that way.
That was my favorite thing about Andy, was that all of his social media connections are I even blinked this, and it works out quite well. A huge thank you to our wonderful guest tonight, Andy Pearson, who has a really fantastic creative athletic mind, and after the 2020 Barkley was canceled, put it to good use by coming up with the Back to Backbone. Did not go as planned, as you just heard, but it just makes me excited to see what he gets up to next. So join us for our after show. We'll have Andy for some additional questions and stuff like that. You can join our after show by going to patreon.com/thegingerrunner. For as little as $1 a month, you get access to all of our after shows. And a reminder that we are doing live shows every single day over a cup of coffee or over a beer for the $3 and above level. It is helping to keep us in business and keep doing this. So consider it.
It also gives us something to look forward to every day.
Great. It's been super great. Brings the community together.
A reason to put pants on. I mean, we don't have to, but
right. Before we move into our Ginger Runner Crew Member of the Week, there are virtual events happening right now that if you want to, basically Kim and I have been talking a lot about how to support small businesses, much like our own. We know the situation that we're in, both Kim and myself, but we also know that other small businesses are in the exact same situation. So a lot of people, whether it's been laid off from a position or restaurant work or any of that sort of thing, where there's just obviously a lack of funds. So there are multiple virtual runs that are helping small businesses right now. Like Aravaipa has their virtual run. I Run Far has their Project Inspiration. So these are big, wonderful things that you should absolutely consider doing if you have the means, because it will go to small businesses. I also wanted to quickly shout out a friend of ours, Matt Trappy, has a really great idea right now. He is a photographer, and his contract business has essentially just been slashed because he is a contract photographer. But he is selling his prints at a deep discount right now. He takes incredible photographs. So shout out to Matt Trappy. What a great idea, and a great way to sort of support him and his family. And with GRGR, which is a Ginger Runner Global Run, that is our annual virtual run that we do every single year. We are wanting to support many small businesses, creators, and artists in that running of it this year. Registration is not open for that yet. We are going to be doing that at the regular time of year. And when we do, we're going to try to get back to as many small businesses as possible. So just keep your eyes open for that. We'll have lots more details and stuff in the coming months. So not immediately, but we just want to start talking about it now as it's on everyone's mind.
And also, just really quick, if your running stores are still open, the small business running stores, please do your best to support them.
Yes. One
of our local running stores who is just trying to be a small business got broken into overnight, which is just like
Seven
it's
Hills.
Heartbreaking.
We've talked to Phil on the show before. We've mentioned him many times. We just shared his link to, because he shut down the store. He's not allowed to do business.
Yeah, everything in Washington.
But he could do online business. So he has been able to fulfill online orders. And what sucks is that his store got broken into last night. Luckily, not too much of the inventory was stolen. But if you find a bunch of Black Diamond packs and Ultra Aspire packs online, probably
from there.
from that store.
Yeah.
But if you have the means to support your local run shop, maybe they're doing something similar, do it. Local run shops could definitely use it right now. And that's it. But at the end of every show, we like to mention a member of the community. We call it our GR Crew Member of the Week. Basically, someone out there is going above and beyond or doing something cool, innovative, creative, and supporting others. It is a nice way to sort of shout out members of the community. Kim, who is our GR Crew Member of the Week?
This week's GR Crew Member of the Week is Holly Spitzer. Holly,
cool.
We've had a chance to meet her on a couple occasions. She's from the Portland area. I just wanted to give Holly a shout out because she does work in healthcare. She's a cardiac cath lab nurse down in the Portland area. So, Holly, you are a GR Crew Member of the Week.
Awesome, Holly. Thank you for what you're doing right now. It's anyone who's working in the healthcare industry at the front lines. It's amazing how much you are putting, like you're going through.
Yeah.
So we thank you. We thank you. So Holly, congratulations on being GR Crew Member of the Week. A reminder, we're going right into the after show with Andy, and we'll ask any residual questions there. Patreon.com/The Ginger Runner. Thank you all so much for the support and for joining us tonight, this afternoon. We'll see you next week for more Ginger Runner Live, or we'll see you tomorrow morning for the Daily Brew.
Sounds good.
Members. All right. Get out there. Train hard and safely.
Or stay in there.
Race
whatever
harder,
you can do.
but virtually. And party the hardest, which you could definitely do right now.
Alone.
See you guys next week. Bye-bye.
Ginger Runner.